Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Today we're going to talk about the new world according to Trump. It's a throwback on that great novel called The World According to Gap, right? Which most of us would have read, in our teens. Very interesting book. But then the world according to Trump is behaving quite differently from the world it was before Trump. And to discuss this new phenomenon with me is General Gautam Murthy, Ambassador Gurjit Singh, and Sunil Pant, and in this webinar of Casa and Ganashot. Uh, Without much ado, General Gautam Murthy, sir, please take on.
Thank you very much, General Shankar. Good evening to you and my fellow panelists, and good evening to all viewers. Why have we called this webinar The New World According to Trump? I wonder whether everyone is aware there are at least three books titled The World According to Trump, including one by Trump himself in 2016. All these books reflect his populist, nationalist, and protectionist ideologies, as also his leadership style, which is, we all know, is authoritarian, highly unconventional, especially in his approach to governance and foreign policy. Trump's vision is basically a foreign policy vision, and Ambassador Gurjeet will speak more on it, is characterized by a very transactional style wherein relationships are used as business deals rather than moral obligations. He was a businessman, he still thinks like a businessman, and in a deal, although many businessmen want to be in a win-win situation, Trump has not been that way. He needs to win every deal. So this approach has led to re-evaluation of alliances and a number of international agreements. This America First policy, MAGA, emphasizes bilateral relations over multilateral multinational agreements, which reflects his nationalist stance that prioritizes US interests because he says we have to make America great again. Perhaps he doesn't realize America is a great country. While he advocates for a very robust military, he also seeks to reduce US involvement in foreign conflicts, preferring economic measures like tariffs and sanctions to military interventions. We have been hearing his interviews that he has been holding when world leaders come up to him. Trump is never shy of meeting the media. He revels in and soaks up the media. So he answers questions very frankly, and you see when he says that if I was there, there would have been no wars. This happened during Obama's time, this happened during Biden's time, and so on and so forth. He critiques globalization. He thinks it has pushed US industries onto the back foot. It has undermined American workers, and that the US is being exploited both by allies and adversaries. Mr. Sunil Pant will speak on trade, but Trump aims to strengthen the US economy by reducing reliance on foreign organizations and promoting domestic manufacturing through tariffs and sanctions. All of us have seen pictures of Detroit, documentaries on Detroit, which is a classic example of what happened to the American car industry. Again, about energy, he wants to streamline regulations. He wants to end policies he considers as, within inverted commas, climate extremism. You heard his famous statement, dig, baby, dig. He doesn't care where in Alaska, dig for oil. He doesn't bother about the environment. He emphasizes rebuilding US military as the strongest force in the world and obviously believes that a strong military force is a deterrent enough. And he wants to lead with strength, but he wants peace in foreign policy. Then securing the US borders, we've seen what he is doing. I'm not going to elaborate on that. And Trump envisions an American leadership within a multipolar world, focusing on economic alliances rather than imposing the American system on other nations. He aims to expand the US influence in certain regions, Greenland, Panama Canal, Canada, and he wants to withdraw from some others. He seeks to counter the rise of alternate economic blocs like BRICS, and we've all seen the warning that he issued right in the beginning to BRICS. because he wants to maintain the dominance of the US dollar. Specific initiatives of Trump, he openly said he wants to acquire Greenland. There is a proposal on Ukraine for ceasefire. We just discussed it before the webinar started. The ball is in Russia's court. On West Asia, he has proposed visions for Gaza that we all know. Panama Canal and Canada, I've already mentioned. Now, what is the basic difference between Trump's vision and the traditional American establishment that he is constantly badgering? He says the traditional US establishment emphasizes the US leadership. He did rather not, he said it, but he looks at the traditional establishment as undermining US leadership, whereas the traditional establishment believe that their networks and military predominance will promote an international liberal order, exemplified by NATO, and we've seen the kind of support NATO has given Ukraine. But Trump focuses on America first. He says, my domestic interests are more important than international alliances. He's been criticized for abdicating the US's role in global leadership and his skepticism, but he is not worried about it. He is bashing on regardless. As far as international institutions are concerned, the traditional establishment work through international institutions like IMF, WTO, the Paris Climate Agreement, and so on. But Trump has voiced his criticism, withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord. He is questioning the value of NATO. He wants Europeans to be able to defend themselves without American support. Now, the traditional establishment advocates military predominance, especially in Europe, using both hard and soft power to secure US interests. But Trump emphasizes military strength but prefers unilateral action and more of an isolationist approach, focusing on each country separately in compartments. Economic policy, again, as opposed to free trade agreements by his predecessor and economic integration like WTO, Trump favors protectionist policies, imposing tariffs. Mr. Sunil Pant will speak on it. And broadly, while the establishment that he's taken over from aligned with liberal internationalism, promoting democracy and human rights abroad, Trump is more of a realist. He prioritizes national sovereignty. Basically, if you recollect, viewers, there was a blueprint project 2025 that came out by the Heritage Foundation. Most of us would have read the executive summary. And if you see it, he is closely following that policy. Although during the run up to the elections, he says he's got nothing to do with Project 2025. But he is asserting the self-interest of US, emphasizing US economic and military strength, and challenging traditional notions of American leadership. This is what Trump is doing. More on it, I'm sure Ambassador Gurjeet and Mr. Sunil Pant and General Shankar will speak more on that. Over back to you, General Shankar. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. To summarize what you have said, Trump is talking of America first. What's on the horizon is there'll be no one system, no one agreed set of rules. American expansionism in a new form is on the horizon. Already the Greenland results are out, which are far right and aligned with Trump vision. Globalization is in recession. New alignments are in, and new alignments which are dictated by America. We don't know whether it's G1, G2, G3. One doesn't know, right? Old alignments which don't work in favor of America, like BRICS, are out. International institutions are under threat, and Ukraine-Russia war is being flipped on its head. If I put it in a short form, right? This is what you have outlined. With this, I'd request Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, sir, do outline the world order as Trump perceives, how it's going to affect many things, including India. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, General Shankar, and thank you, General Murthy. Heard you with great interest. So, when I heard this subject that you have chosen, I must deviate from it because I frankly don't see any order. I see a new Trump disorder. So an order has, steps to it. Disorder has no steps. So it is a as and when we canly policy. Today I can do this, I will announce it. So if you try and see, first, what is evident is that the American century is perhaps clearly coming to an end. And isolationist America is reflective of that. If they don't want influence over the world except through brute force, then the American century is really coming to an end. But the Asian century is continuing, and that Trump cannot stop. So, therefore, the Indo Pacific and Asia are given. It is for America to choose whether they want their power to be diminished, curtailed, become isolationist, or remain internationalist. That's their choice. But I don't think that is going to alter the realities of the capital production and the economic strength of Asia. So I think that is very clear. Second, in the disorder that Trump is chasing, multilateralism is put to the sword. And among the victims of this are the United Nations. I think it was a spectacle that for the first time, I think, a P5 country supports a resolution, sponsors it, and then votes against it. So this kind of flip-flop can only be called disorderly conduct. It is not order. Secondly, the globalization on which the US has actually done well by it for themselves is also now sought to be curtailed. They don't believe in diversity, equality, and all that. They're actually saying gender is not our objective. They are saying that the SDGs are not our objective. And they said, their representative in the UN said that the issues of gender and SDG were defeated at the ballot in November 2024. So the internationally agreed norms on climate, on equality, or gender, on SDGs have all been put aside. Plus, America is withdrawing from the WHO, which means a future pandemic, the Americans are not involved. If you look at all this, it is not everything which Trump is doing. Please remember the United Nations Law of the Sea, which the United States often quotes, they themselves are not a signatory to it till today.
Yes.
UNCLOS, yes.
Yes,
Kyoto
yes.
Protocol was concerned, they stayed out of it.
Yeah.
And only they came in late, and now they're withdrawing from climate again. So WTO, they have fractured by not letting the dispute settlement mechanism function. So the Americans' commitment to multilateralism, except on their terms, has been consistent, and Trump is only saying it rudely. That is essential of the difference. Next, you move to neighbors. Normally, Trump would have good neighborly relations. It was Trump 1.0 which redid NAFTA with Canada and Mexico. And today he is junking that and threatening them with high tariff for reasons which are not entirely specified. Is it because of immigration? Is it because of any particular goods and services? And is fentanyl a good enough reason to impose huge tariffs on your neighbors who have otherwise got a free trade area with you? So I think he is not a repair handyman. He is a destruction engineer in this way. Now, after the neighbors, you go to your allies, right? And there, I think General Shankar and General Murthy mentioned NATO is now living on an edge of American resistance. So the allies like Europe, for instance, are largely being left on their own and told to fend for yourself. Now, before the Ukraine crisis broke out, Europe was telling America, mind your own business. We will deal with Ukraine through the Minsk process. And today the Americans are paying them back in kind and saying, you keep out, we'll deal with Russia and Ukraine on our own, and just as you kept us out then, you stay out now. So there is no question of allies. Whether the Europeans spend more on defense is now no more a US demand. It is their own necessity. So that is the third. What about your rivals and your enemies? They seem to be getting away. The Russians are having the easiest time right now with the Americans. The North Koreans were embraced by Trump in Trump 1.0. He's not said anything about them now. The Iranians are their bugbear, but he's offering them a nuclear deal now, which earlier he never wanted. And with China, both sides are remarkably silent on what is the next step. So, America's systemic rivals and enemies are actually having a good time. They are not the subject of the new Trump order or disorder. Yes, it is possible that he will come to them turn by turn, but in the first flush, they are not impacted. There are no new sanctions on Iran or on China or on North Korea, nothing. He even talks to Hamas over Israel to get his hostages out. Well, with Pakistan is another case. I think Pakistan was cock-a-hoop because they released some para-terrorist and sold him as a great terrorist to the Americans, and Trump announced it in Congress and paid tribute to Pakistan as a great friend in the counter-terrorism. And a week later, now Pakistan is in their crosshairs for total visa restrictions and travel bans. So I don't think there is any consistency in this. And now I come to the Indo-Pacific. I put it to you that the Indo-Pacific, Japan and India know that with or without Australia, with or without the USA, we have a China to contend with. So whether the other two Quad partners stick by us or not, Japan and India are going to try their best to keep it a free and open Indo-Pacific. And in the last 1 month since Trump's election and Ishiba and Modi meetings in the White House, you see the intensity of Japanese delegations coming to India. You see the intensity of defense cooperation going up. And even if these are not new, the timing and bunching is very evident. So I think India and Japan are clear that we have to hold up the two ends of the Indo-Pacific. What do other countries feel? I made 2 visits to ASEAN recently, and I asked them, do you feel neglected? They said yes. But everybody neglects them. Even the Biden administration in the first 6 months neglected ASEAN. So they should get used to it. But I asked them, do you prefer being embraced or would you prefer being neglected? And they said being neglected is better because whoever is embraced by the Americans is perhaps going to get a shock. So it is better to stay away and see how best. Now, to conclude, I would say that if you want me to draw certain things out of Trump action, first, I already explained to you how he's dealing with the world, in my view. Second, he is inconsistent. Shock and awe is there, but there is no consistency of policy. He wants Greenland. He wants to take over the Panama Canal and then ask BlackRock to go ahead. You notice the Chinese didn't protest. They don't want to rile him. And the Danes are not talking too loudly about Greenland. So the second aspect is critical minerals seem to be a running theme in the Trump policies. Ukraine, critical minerals. Russia, critical minerals. Canada, critical minerals. Greenland, critical minerals. I can't see critical minerals in Gaza. But there is
That's a nice one.
there is a huge problem in DRC. And I was in DRC recently, and they all blame the Americans for the Rwanda backed rebellion. And they say this is again an effort to grab Eastern DRC's critical minerals. So that is the one consistent theme I'm seeing, critical minerals. And finally, I think the tarification, I'm not talking much about it because I think Mr. Pant will do so. Tarification for strategic purpose is clear. Also clear is an unwillingness to go to war. No boots on the ground, no wars to enter, deal with everybody through undiplomatic tarification if necessary, but achieve your aims and bash people down. So, as we face shock and awe, let us see whether the shock remains and how awed we remain. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you made some very nice points. I like the idea of the new Trump disorder, inconsistent to the hilt, and full of shock and awe. Who's going to get shocked? Who's going to get awed? Only time will tell. And multilateralism to the sword. The new rules-based order is out. A new rules-based order is not in. We don't know what it is. Right? That's the major problem, the issue which you have brought out. The flip-flops we have to get used to. Okay. And then the new Trump order looks at neighbors as not so, not the best friends. Allies are on the way out, and old adversaries and rivals seem to be getting a better deal. So the whole thing, which American policy has been living by for the past 30 to 40 years, has been flipped on its head. And what will happen, one doesn't know. One point I would like to add to what you said is his policy might lead to remilitarization of Europe, and the consequences of that are also not known as of now. And the fact that, you know, Japan and India have to do the heavy lifting in free and open for a free and open Indo-Pacific is on the cards. And of course, like you said, it's not only ASEAN. I think he's even neglected the global South as a whole.
Yes.
And the interesting thing which you brought out is this focus on critical minerals, right? And wherever he goes, he seems to be putting this up front as a single point agenda to do a lot of things, interesting things. And this defines the new Trump order as it exists. Now, I'd request Mr. Sunil Pant, sir, please do outline what you feel about the new economic order which Trump is trying to put in. And if I might
Thank you,
say,
sir.
it's all tariff ke upar tariff hai.
Tarif per tarif. Very, very interesting. And thank you, sir, for this opportunity. And my co-panelists, I think that was a very wonderful and a very comprehensive presentation that he made. Brought out some very interesting points. And rare earths, rare minerals, yes. Because when you look at it, if you really think about it, Trump essentially is true to his real estate dealing format. He looks for value in every enterprise and in every transaction that he enters into. And here he sees value not in Ukraine or the freedom of Ukraine, really speaking, but in the rare earths that he can get out of there. If he is going to go back to Afghanistan, that might again be for the rare earths that are there in certain parts. If he is going to be dealing with Iran, it could be because of the fact that he looks at Iran again as a resource, a mineral resource. So I think, he's got a very, very economic, or maybe you can even say, a transactional point of view in terms of his dealings. When we look at the way he's been looking at the tariffs, now he's been raising tariffs, he's been talking about tariffs. He has not raised tariffs to the extent that he threatened to, but he has definitely shown all the energy in that direction. I think it's something to influence people, to be able to bring them to the negotiating table and to be able to get a deal out of them. So again, it's a deal making approach that he has. When we look at the tariff barriers he's talking about, we also have to look at the non-tariff barriers that are already there and which do not seem to be going away. In fact, if you look at it, if there's this pushback on immigration, if there is that threat of people being sent back to their countries and of any kind of coercive action consequent to that, it becomes something like a non-tariff barrier to movement of people. That is always there. In case of WTO, we will all recollect the movement, the fourth board 4 was supposed to be very important for an equitable distribution of opportunity around the world. That did not happen because initially, after considering and thinking that they had the upper edge, the US and the Western powers decided that they really would not be as well off as they were thinking they would be, and therefore they went slow on that. And that's one of the reasons I think that the GATS, that is the Agreement on Trade and Services, really didn't take off.
Yes.
The other thing that one needs to be considering is in terms of what exactly is Trump attempting to do? On the one side, he's saying that by raising these tariff barriers, by raising taxes on imports, he is going to make the American industry more competitive. But really speaking, if the American industry is not going to survive in isolation, if it is actually going to reach out to the world and try to again get back into the mass markets around the globe, it'll need to be competitive. So it cannot be competitive if it is now imposing on itself a tariff barrier of 25% or a high tariff barrier as compared to the producers of those goods who are probably able to make it for much less. There was a very interesting example where a truck would probably cost about $30,000 in one place, but here with all the barriers that were coming in from China, it would cost $60,000. And now with that $60,000 loaded on to your expense sheet, how would it really look in terms of your costing capability? So I think these are issues that are not going to survive in the future. These are issues that have been built up and they are being pushed now to be able to create an environment and to create a mindset where people come to the deal table and start dealing with him. And he wants the deals on his terms. Pushing Canada, for instance, really speaking, doesn't make as much sense as it would in case, of a country that was more hostile or less open to suggestions. But Canada knows where it has to go and where it has to stay. And at that point in time, putting the threat of higher sanctions, or sorry, of higher taxation, of tariffs on Canada is only a message that is being sent out. Similarly, for Mexico, after having made them agree, and as was very rightly pointed out, after having done NAFTA just a short while ago, then to come back and then reopen all those issues and start working on an agreement which is not a free trade agreement, trying to reach out and trying to absorb Panama to be able to take care of the flows of trade that again could become an impediment to the raising of barriers and to the raising of threats. So I think what Trump is doing is he is acting disorderly, not because he really is all that disorderly, but because he is portraying what is, I suppose, also known in common parlance as the madman theory. He is trying to portray himself in a certain direction as somebody who is not entirely dependable, entirely reliable, entirely predictable. And with that kind of an image, he finds it probably easier to come to the negotiating table as he would have when he was handling his projects earlier. I mean, we must also remember that he's one man who's been through 6 bankruptcies. So he knows where projects go wrong and where the deals do not get struck. So with that in mind, I think he's been using this. Now, the question that comes in is that if he is looking at making US goods competitive, the US market competitive externally, but he is at the same time making the inflow, the input market less competitive by raising the barriers, how does he balance it out? So there's a very peculiar situation here where on the one side, there seems to be an attempt at weakening the dollar to be able to make the dollar a more acceptable currency for trade, or rather for imports by others, as compared to a very strong dollar, which would make it more difficult for people to import from the US. It could maybe make the imports cheaper into US in terms of the dollar value, but in terms of export, it was going to create difficulties for exporters from the US. So, business wise, initially, the tariffs that have been put on steel, on aluminium, and the metals may interest some of the manufacturers there. But on the whole, if you look at it in the medium term and in the longer term, it's not going to be very easy for them to be able to absorb the higher costs that their own inefficiencies bring, which are shielded by the higher tariffs that they impose on the more efficient producers outside, and then go back into the world and compete out there. So, this is going to be a big area. He's going to look at soft spots. As we see, the focus could be, let's say, India, of course, is a very small market, really speaking, with just a $129 billion trade with US out of their $7 trillion trade. I mean, we are very small, but still, as an example, the food sector in India could be something that could be subject to pressures just to be able to crack open a couple of nuts and show that yes, I mean business. The reason why I think a visible uh, return of the immigres, of the illegal immigres from India was done, was also to establish a tough man image, where he showed that yes, I can do that, and he did that just when the prime minister had finished the visit. So I think overall, if we look at it, what we are looking at is a level of turbulence for the next 5 to 6 months, after which things are probably going to settle down into a more predictable fashion, because this is not the way you can do business, run the world, or run an institution. You cannot work on the basis of continuous anxiety and uncertainty. And therefore, there will be some kind of a tendency to come into certain forms, norms, maybe different from the ones that we have become used to, maybe more robust and more aggressive in their format, but definitely there. So I think what I would think as a person with a banking background is wait it out. Wait for about 5 6 months, then take a view. Don't take a view now, because things are in a state of a flux right now, and it would be very difficult to actually predict something and then find that what you predicted on the basis of certain assumptions is not really something that is going to hold. So I think that is my preliminary statement that I would like to make. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you also brought up some very interesting point. Uh, Trump is acting disorderly and projecting a madman image, but at the end, at the root, he knows what he is doing. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing the way he is doing what he is doing. And of course, he's going to, there will be turbulence for the next 5 to 6 months. And then the best thing to do is wait out this turbulence till some, normal levels are arrived at, or a new normal is arrived at, and then start doing business. The issue which is of, I wouldn't say interest, but we need to take note of, is that India could be made an example, like it was made an example during the immigration issue, because there are soft spots in India economically which can be hit, and that is something which we will have to see. But fundamentally, at some point of time, Mr. Trump has to balance his input cost to tariffs or being competitive outside, how he has to balance between a strong dollar and a weak dollar and things like that. And at some point of time, I think fundamental economic sense will have to set in. And already the markets are telling something. The US markets itself are telling him something. And he's not a fool that he doesn't know where the markets are going. So slowly things will come around. I quite agree with you that we are still in the first flush of Trump inconsistency. So we'll see where this goes. Uh, Now, let me turn my views or everyone's views to what's going to happen between China, India, and USA, because that is something which Ambassador Gurjit also spoke of. That India and Japan have to do the heavy lifting in the Indo-Pacific. Uh, when you read the Chinese media, it is very apparent that they see an opportunity and they see trouble also ahead. The opportunity they see is Trump is going to leave a lot of vacuum, and China aims to fill that vacuum. Trump is not bothered about ASEAN at this point of time. He's also not bothered of global South, which China says, "Let me get into it." China is very happy with what's happening in the Ukraine-Russia deal because it's in China's interest that the Russia-Ukraine war continues. And if this deal doesn't go through, it's to their benefit. And I think China will do all its, in all, whatever it's in its power to keep this war going and keep things boiling there. China also feels slighted to a large extent by Trump, for having been kept out of the Middle East process completely. In fact, China has been marginalized in the Middle East, and he's also deliberately keeping China out of the equation in the Russia-Ukraine, story. So that is the overall view in China. Now, how does China counter it? We have to understand that China itself is in a weak position. Its economy is not good at all. The recent two sessions, if you analyze it, at the top, Xi Jinping has made a lot of talk of new productive forces and technology and turn to private systems and all that. But internally, the discussion shows that the economy is not reviving in a hurry uh, due to many factors, right? At this point, what China sees is an opportunity with India. I'm coming to India and China relations. The recent outreach by Wang Yi to India to say the elephant and dragon can, get together and we have to build on our civilizational values for a better tomorrow and resist hegemonism and all that is a clear outreach to India because India still represents markets. And with India on its side, China is in a better position to handle the Indo-Pacific. The other factor is also there that look, uh, China also understands that India will, be used, or rather, that's the way they understand it. India will be used by USA to get to China through the Indo-Pacific. So the flip is also there with China. The way they look at it, they feel that they're worried about any growing Sino-Indian, partnership, whether it's partnership, alliance, and all that, they view it as a quasi-alliance. In some cases, they feel that this partnership is stronger than an alliance. In some cases, not. But at the same time, they also see that what Modi did, Mr. Prime Minister Modi did, and that they feel that he was ill-treated by Trump and put in place for all the reasons which we have discussed. So I see a interesting triangle developing between China, India, and USA. For our part, we need to understand, China is what it is. We have to deal with it on our terms. With Trump withdrawing from everything and at times threatening a G2 and at times threatening a G3, we should be clear that we are on our own. And we need to build our internal strengths accordingly. At the end of the day, it is India which has to deal with China. And when this new rules or the rules based order gets degraded considerably, we will be left to make our own rules and to deal with China. And that is something we have to be quite conscious of. Whether we'll get American assistance or not, or in any form, is a bonus the way I look at it. And to that extent, we have a tough time ahead, right? Because we have a tough time ahead. We have an issue in terms of technology. We have an issue in terms of economic revival, which needs a lot of investment. Where is this investment going to come from? Where is this technology going to come from? So, as a hedge against both, as a hedge against China and as a hedge against USA, and its own unilateralism and withdrawal from many global institutions, I foresee that India has to build its bridges. I wouldn't say build its bridges, strengthen its bridges with Russia. And to that extent, Prime Minister Modi's upcoming visit to Russia will be very important. Uh, I I rest my case here, sir. General Gautam Murthy, sir. If you have any comments or anything, please do say. Otherwise, we'll take questions from people.
Okay, I'll make two quick comments. One is that all of us enjoy going to the beach and bathing in the sea, swimming in the sea. But what happens when you see a huge wave coming? You duck and let it pass over. And this is exactly the point I think all four of us are making over here, that this is a huge wave that is upon us. It's a friendly wave or a non friendly wave. We do not know. As far as in one domain it is friendly, in one domain it is not so friendly. But when a wave like this comes, you need to duck. The other point, and of course, you come up later. The other point I'd like to emphasize what Mr. Pant had on what he mentioned. 20 years ago, I read one of the best books that I have found in all the reading that I've done. It's called The World is Flat. I think all of us would have read it, by Thomas Friedman. And in that book, Thomas Friedman brings out how closely connected businesses are, people are in this present world. And what Mr. Sunil Pant says, I need go back to that. A truck costing $30,000 today, if you're going to impose tariffs on spares, on other things like components, on paint and machinery and everything else which is also imported, you're going to raise the cost of your own truck, a Chevrolet truck or a Dodge truck. Now, this book is something that Trump administration, the people taking decisions, should read and try and understand. What was true 20 years ago is true today. The world is even more globally interconnected. We all know what a tough time we had when we were facing the Chinese threat after Galwan and we wanted to de-link. It is not possible in today's businesses unless your people are willing to pay a huge price. And in all democracies, no government will take such unpopular decisions. So, in sum, all I have to say is that the Trump administration sooner or later will realize that you can push this up to a point. It's very good optics. It's excellent. It shows that you're a strong man, but you can push it up to a point. But when push comes to a shove, you will realize that there are very strong impediments. And as far as India is concerned, that we are discussing, General Shankar, we've had many discussions on China. We have said from the beginning, even during the past administration, that India needs to be able to do things on its own to deter China from taking any action with respect to our land borders or anything else. Our businesses are entwined with China. There are further openings up. Tourism is going to begin in a big way, but we need to keep our powder dry, build up our capabilities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Before I, get to the questions, I'd like to make one small comment about the Trump order which is coming in. If you notice the way the U.S. spokesman speaks, or the Secretary of Defense speaks, or their Secretary of State speaks, or anyone from USA speaks, they always refer to Trump today. Just the way everyone refers in China refers to Xi Jinping. To that extent, the way they talk about everything, in America is all about Trump. These days, get the feeling that it is something like, it's a mirror image of how China speaks. I leave it at that for people to think over because that's the way I've looked at it. Okay. Is Trump unleashing creative destruction? He said he wants cost of energy and cost of capital kept low, but isn't afraid of triggering a near-term recession for greater long-term growth. IG Privet. I'd like Ambassador Gurjeet, sir, please, your view on this, especially because of the word creative destruction. And you said look, Trump is destructing, doing destruction of the world order the way it existed. All yours, sir.
Thank you. So, today I am not ready to accept any positive adjectives with regard to the Trump disorder. So, destruction, yes, I don't see the creativity in it. I think Mr. Pant has clearly pointed out the cost that the American economy will bear out of inconsistencies and tariffication. Already, the American people on whose behalf MAGA and the Trump administration speak are already saying that you promised us a business friendly, low tax economic growth. And today we are not having that. Today, when it is time, in the first 3 months for representatives of the party to go and do town halls in their constituency, they are being asked not to do so because there's a 30 to 40% drop in Republican ratings and Trump ratings among their own voters. So people are not seeing the benefits of Trump economic policy coming to their door. And I think Mr. Pant has explained partly why this is happening. I mean, you look at Ontario, the way they have raised the rates of energy supplies. What will the Americans do? Where will they substitute that power supply from? It's not thought out. So I don't see this. They are definitely on a self-destruct mode. They haven't thought out alternative supplies to the high tariff products that they are going to ban. I mean, these are like reverse sanctions, basically, saying you won't be able to sell to me. Earlier it was you won't be able to export. Now you won't be able to sell to me. And everybody wants the American market, but where is the extent of that?
All right. Thanks a lot, sir. Tariffs are a two-way game. In the present, can the USA afford to use this economic tool as an instrument of global domination? Mr. Pant, your view on this?
The US is attempting to use these as a tool for economic domination. It's not necessary that they would be very successful, because there would be, and there have been indications that there would be reciprocal tariffs that would be imposed. People in Europe are still not totally comfortable with the way things have evolved. So they are sort of, I may use the word pussyfooting on this, but in due course, we will probably find a more robust reaction coming in from erstwhile allies also, just like maybe Latin American countries, maybe Mexico more so. Canada, yes, you are seeing something out there. Britain has been sort of chastised, but is most likely to come back on these matters. France, Germany, that have in the past held their own in the global forums. So I think, there is going to be some kind of a reaction to this. But the fact remains, in Trump's vision, I think, if I may go so far as to try to understand what he would be looking for, is the first mover advantage. So you move in with a sledgehammer, create that disturbance, get your advantage, extract your benefits, and then let things be for the time being. Maybe pat the person on the back, just like they did with Ukraine. After the treatment that Zelensky got in Oval, after he had, they say, allegedly apologized for all that, he was given a sort of a nod and a pat. So I think, some people could do that. I don't know if this can be consistently done, because after a while, there would be a kind of reaction. And when this reaction gets consolidated, it becomes more difficult. One extreme view that people are taking is that actually this is a carve out of the word that is happening. And in this carve out of the word that is happening, the spheres of influence ideas are back in power, back in play. And therefore, now you've got three probably distinct spheres of influence that are emerging. and they are going to do a settlement between them, more like the Yalta conference, and then see how this can be carried forward. This may be very, very far fetched. This may be extreme, what should I say, irrational thinking. But sometimes, when you look at irrational people who have been behaving in a certain manner, trying to fix a certain problem, you may come up with irrational solutions also. So let's also wait and see. As I said, we just need to wait and see about how the footfalls happen, how things move over the next couple of months to be able to at least get an idea of which way and how the wave that General Murthy talked about is going to hit us. I mean, is it going to totally and completely submerge us, or are we going to come back gasping for breath, or are we going to be floating right on top? So I think let's wait for that.
Thank you, sir. Wait and watch is the issue. Sir, due to Trump's actions, boycott America is trending now. Will it cause any good to USA? Will the other grouping gain the advantage vis-a-vis USA? General Murthy, sir, all yours.
See, boycott America cannot actually, I mean, it may trend, it's more of a fad. No, as I had mentioned in my earlier intervention, that no country can stay away from each other. India tried to boycott China goods in Chinese goods in the year 2022, 23, 24, till the thought took place. What happened? Our businesses only increased. So similarly, Latin American countries, Canada, they're all very dependent on the US. Uh, it you cannot you just hitting your head against a wall. No country can boycott another country in today's interconnected world, especially in the world of manufacturing, in the world of business, in the world of we're getting components from every place, manufacturing it, software, hardware, everything is interconnected. Your foods are interconnected. Trump talks about farm products, and we are getting so much from Europe, but our things are not selling in Europe. You see, it is what people want. Foodstuffs of the US are selling here. You walk into some of these top department stores, you find products from across the world. So, who is going to boycott whom, and how will a boycott succeed? I don't have an answer for that. According to me, there is no way a boycott can succeed. It's at best a fad and a statement to be made. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Uh, I'll not talk of many other things, but the third, number three, says what will be the configuration of the BRICS and the CRIP? That is basically he's talking of China, Russia, Iran, and Korea. Pakistan grouping, which was touted as a new counter to the NATO-led West. Uh, Ambassador Gurjeet, sir, all yours, if you can. I'm sure you can.
Regarding
That's
the
an understatement.
regarding the second one, except for Pakistan and Russia, the others have largely, as I said, had a free pass so far. Let's wait and see what they do. But coming to BRICS, so Trump has been firing salvos at BRICS, challenging them that if you try de-dollarization, I'll fix you with tariffs. Half of the BRICS countries, I think, are under sanctions of the US already. So I don't know if you are already under sanctions, what tariffs are you going to place on them? And if they survived your sanctions, they probably survive everything else. But if you notice that the BRICS as a whole is suddenly very quiet right now, because each of the BRICS countries, I was in Ethiopia recently, they are a BRICS member. They are trying to judge their own relationship with the United States and not try to rock the boat. And there have been no particular aggregation of issues that they can bring to the BRICS. Now, India, among all of them, is perhaps the closest to the United States and least interested in rocking the boat. But we are going to be the next BRICS chair. So we will have a dilemma on our hands. Perhaps it will be instructive to see what the United States does to South Africa, who are the current G20 chair, because the next G20 chair is the US itself. So are they going to destroy the G20? Are they going to disable it? Or are they going to ignore it? We don't know. So let's see what they do with G20. That will give us lessons what to do with BRICS. But I think at the moment, everybody is just watching their step, minding. India's attitude is very clear. Let's engage the United States on whatever they want to say. Let's not challenge them publicly. So you see Commerce Minister who rushed to the United States for talks. Now the United States had said several things about those talks. The Indian side is remarkably silent on what we are doing.
True.
So we are adopting that approach. I think BRICS is one step ahead. BRICS is adopting an ostrich approach, pretending the problem doesn't exist and we will deal with it when it comes to it. So I think that is where the difference lies.
Yeah, I think so too, sir. And if I may I would like to add, you see, you leave Brazil out. Look at Russia, India, and China. Each have their own issues with USA. And Russia's position with the USA itself is a bit nebulous at this point of time. It doesn't know tomorrow it's going to have a deal or not deal. And their bigger problem is not BRICS, their bigger problem is Ukraine. Their bigger problem is influence in the Middle East and their loss of influence in Africa. So those are the bigger issues which Russia is more worried about. They are worried about their own economy. So like what Ambassador Gurjeet said, I think BRICS is the second stage. The first stage is each country is trying to reset its relationship with USA. And equally, USA is also trying to reset its relationship with each of the countries individually. If globalization breaks, then it has to be a bilateral kind of equation. So we have to necessarily be in the wait and watch mode as we go along. The next question, I won't say question, this is a statement. I would like your reactions to it. Our relations with USA cannot be at the cost of our relations with China. General Gautam Murthy, sir, your views.
You see, we have a relationship with China which has been adversarial. We've had problems with China. The border issue is looming. China wants the border issue to be kept to a side and let us build our relationship in other domains. But India is very firm that, look, this needs to be sorted out. It's a festering problem between India and China. We fought a war. We've had a couple of skirmishes, spaced apart. War 62, skirmish in 67, skirmish in 2020. So we have a problem with China. Yet at the same time, we are doing our businessmen and a lot of small businesses. Our pharmaceutical industry depends on China. Lots of small businesses depend on China. So we have this relationship with China. With the US, we have been just building our strategic partnership. It is growing from strength to strength, strength to strength. Whatever people may say, Mr. Modi, our Prime Minister, is respected by Mr. Trump. India is respected by the US administration. So and Ambassador Gurjeet will bear me out. We do look at both these countries separately. We are not in the zero-sum game. It is not one at the cost of other. Yes, we understand China's sensitivities. We are not getting into any kind of a strategic alliance with the US or a security alliance with the US. The strategic partnership is different from a strategic alliance. And we need to keep it that way. We have to keep ourselves equidistant from both, look at India's interests. May I request Ambassador Gurjeet to please
Yeah,
throw some more light on this?
in fact, I'll request after Ambassador Gurjeet, even Mr. Sunil Pant, you may weigh in on this part because
Yes.
I think this is a very important issue.
Before the election in the United States, the timing was curious that India and China started talking again. So I think that was creating an option for both. That in case if Trump wins and does what he's doing now, we may have better options. But yes, you pointed out the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has said about the elephant and the dragon dancing together. But frankly, they have done very little to woo us. all the problems that we have remain.
Yes.
So unless they move forward, engagement is one thing, but solving problems is another. I mean, why would we want to embrace the Chinese when they don't want to solve your problem? At least with the United States, you can hope for solving a problem. So I think that China is consistent in not solving the problem with India, any problem. So there, China has to show a greater heart and mind to engage India. For India, a multipolar world is better than any unipolar or bipolar world. The Americans can't sustain a unipolar world. They may be tempted to engage China for a G2. That also is detrimental to us. So, as you have been saying, Russia is important. I have been saying Europe is important. ASEAN is important. We need a multipolar world. So we can be a player in that. If the US makes up with China, our problems in the Indo-Pacific will not go away. That's what I said in the beginning. And therefore, we need to engage with the Japanese and other friends to restrain them in our region. So this is where China, if they want India to not go into the American embrace, they need to create a ambience where India-China relations can really look up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pant, your views on this?
See, it's very evident that if you look at it in terms of capacity to deal, India is very small in terms of the comprehensive national power, determined more by the economy of the country. And therefore, we cannot try to have the heft that China will have. We will therefore always have to look at China as something to be handled and warded off rather than as something to be immediately collaborated with. There is, I don't see a way where we can build a collaborative arrangement with China. Therefore, we will need to have some kind of safeguards built right in. We see that happening in our neighborhood all the time. When they move into the Maldives, when they move into Sri Lanka, when they move into Bangladesh, when they move into Myanmar, we have it all over and all around, and they continue to put pressure on Bhutan to take what they can out of it. So I think we need to be very careful in terms of dealing with China. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we have to shut ourselves off from China. I remember that I had gone to Shanghai to upgrade our representative office there to a branch, and I was talking to the Chinese people. There is such a big disconnect between what they understand of India and what the official media says about India. There is, number one, they were. I found at least the individuals I met were more friendly. But when we talk to people who we invited to our formal function and everything, they were very guarded, and they were very careful about what they would tell us and what they would say to us. So I think it operates at multiple levels, and I'm sure we do that too. But it just goes to show that that level of comfort is not there in our dealing with the Chinese. And the Chinese, when they do get a chance, do try to make use of the leverages that they can get by way of any slips that we may have made. That is quite evident in terms of what they've done in recent past all around us. In terms of the relationship with the US, I find that the US is more of a benign giant. It looks at India when it thinks that India has something to offer, but it doesn't look at India when it feels that India is not consequential in the equation that it has built up. So there are a lot of times when we feel that we should be there on the table, but we aren't. And I think it's again a question of what is the value we bring in their reckoning to them, and that way the US is and has always been very transactional. Sometimes it hurts, but there are times when we realize that this is the way it is going to be. I remember we had the cease and desist order on State Bank of India many years ago in the US. But one of the trigger points for that was not so much the violations that State Bank of India had done as the perception of India as an upcoming entity that had to be cut down to size. So I think, these kind of issues will be there when you are dealing with people with different levels of strength and different levels of response. So I think when it comes to India, China, US, we will have to be prepared for a very turbulent and a very unstable relationship till such time as we are able to either move up the value chain and come to be able to almost be equals or be more than equals, or we will have to be ready to accept all these kind of uh, pushing around that may come our way. I think we'll have to be careful.
Thanks a lot. So, I my last two bits on China. We have to understand, as much as we feel there's a wave coming from USA, even China is feeling that the wave is coming from USA onto them. That's one. And second thing, which I keep repeating, there's a huge disconnect between the way China is behaving externally and what is happening internally. Their internal economy is in a wreck. Let's not have any doubts about it. So their external economy is export driven, which it goes with a lot of hype. So there's a clear fracture internally, and that doesn't give China the heft it had earlier. And that is something which we need to recognize and handle China accordingly, whether it's diplomatically, whether it's economically, or whether it is territorially and militarily. The same thing with USA, as we see. We're going to have a new paradigm coming up, but I don't think that USA can afford to be uh, more than, cannot be transactional always with India, because it needs a safe anchor here. And the very fact that Trump has did mention the India Middle East economic corridor shouldn't be lost sight of, because that's his way of stitching up the entire Middle East to himself. But having said that, I go with what Ambassador Gurjit Singh said. India has to plow its own path, has to have a multilateral relationship with the Middle East, with ASEAN, with the global South, Russia, China, and India to suit, and USA to suit its interests. Of course, Europe also to suit India's interests. I thought overall we had a terrific discussion, and I would like to thank all panelists for giving their views. General Gautam Murthy, sir, you may conclude.
Yes, I very much agree. I think we've had quite a freewheeling and a wonderful discussion. Lots of views came about. I all it remains for me is to thank you, General Shankar, for hosting this. Thank you, Ambassador Gurjeet. Thank you, Mr. Sunil Pant. We could not have Ambassador Ashok Kanta with us today because he had a family emergency that he had to attend to. And thank you, viewers, all of you, for your patience and your patient hearing. Goodbye, all the best, and happy Holi for tomorrow.
Happy
Jai
Happy
Holi.
Hind.
Holi to everyone, and thanks a lot.
Thank you, and same to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.